Well, hey guys, my name is Danny Vermeulen, welcome to Waves Motion, and today we're going to talk about the Mavic Air 2. It's been a while since I've uploaded anything relevant to this channel. So coming from the Parrot Anafi and now flying the Mavic Air 2, I do have a couple of things to say about this product. Because if you've watched some of my videos about the Parrot Anafi, you know I was quite content about that drone. Even though the build quality wasn't always on par with, for instance, the DJI products, the image quality was really good, and it had the zoom functionality. So that combo for me was quite a game changer back then. That's I think 2 years ago right now. So fast forward to today. For me, this was the moment to jump from the Parrot Anafi or the Parrot brand to the DJI camp and go for the Mavic Air 2. I've been flying this drone for quite a while now. I think I have around 20 hours and counting on this drone right now. And my average flight time is about 20 minutes. Try to return to home at the first warning, the first battery warning. I did deplete the battery pack once until actually 0 or 1% I think, and the drone just came down. I had no control over it anymore. It did go down soft, so it didn't fall from the sky, but it was quite a scary moment. It was while shooting a commercial with my dear friend Tom. He went to Mongolia with Found Lost to shoot a documentary. He went to the North Cape to shoot for Canon. You should definitely check out his YouTube channel or his Instagram page. We were shooting some Ferraris and Lamborghinis for a car commercial. And I will do a video on that as well, because it's going to be an updated version of how to shoot a cinematic car sequence. Yeah, I just wanted to nail this one more shot, but it was really windy and there was a really long road ahead, which had incredible lines when you were looking at the frame. But because it was so windy, the drone started to drift slightly left and right, and so I was doing like 3-4 attempts trying to nail that one shot, and yeah, I maxed it out I guess at the last attempt. But yeah, that was that. That's the only time I totally depleted the battery, and it didn't go to the full 30 or 32 minutes that's stated in the specs, but like I said, it was really windy. I think I flew 27 minutes, which is fine for me. That's a great flight time for me. So that's the introduction, and I think we're already at 5 minutes or so. Let's go to the drone right now. My reference is the Parrot Anafi and the Mavic 2 Pro, so that are the two drones that I'm going to compare it with every now and then, because it's a great point of reference, I think, because those two drones were pretty capable, and a lot of people know about those drones as well. So I want to divide this in a couple of sectors. Let's say build quality, image quality, handling, and overall look and feel, I guess, noise, and I think that's about it. So let's talk about build quality. If you look at this drone, it's almost like a copy of the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic 2 Zoom, and I really like the design. If you would compare this to the Parrot Anafi, for instance, the Parrot Anafi was quite a design, I wouldn't say failure, because the Parrot Anafi was designed pretty neat in a way that you could tilt the camera all the way up. So it had a 180-degree angle moving up and down with the gimbal or with the camera, which was really nice. So they really thought that through, but looking at the build quality, it felt like a prototype. It always felt like I was flying with this prototype, and it was not a finished product. So if you were looking at the plastic, where the seams, there was always like this big gap, or it wasn't really aligned. You saw some glue on some places, like it was assembled by hand. I don't know, it was a pretty quirky drone, to say the least. So the build quality is really well. The design is, of course, super neat. You can fold the drone until it's a really small package again. This is not the Fly More combo. This is just the package with one battery, the remote and the drone, so there's no pouch or whatever. So you can't carry it around in a pouch from DJI. You have to buy one separately or just carry it in your own bag or whatever. Which is, for me, is no problem. Flying with one battery is, for me, for 90% of the time, it's more than enough. It's 30 minutes, 27 minutes is perfect. I don't need to fly a lot more. It has the power on button on top, and the battery goes out. Really simple. You just drop it in from the top. So this is like the battery. And this is also, I think, half the weight of the drone. It weighs almost nothing right now. And you can just drop it in, give it a push, and that's it. You're ready to fly. One thing that is something that you have to really take care about is this thing. And this is the Gimbal Protector, but occasionally I ran into the issue that I put on the Gimbal Protector, which goes pretty easy, but I forgot to take it off when powering on the drone. And that's, well, that can be a problem. They say that it's possible that the gimbal overheats, breaks down or whatever. They are brushless motors, so it shouldn't hurt the gimbal immediately. And right now it hasn't hurt the gimbal for me. And I've had this issue, I think, 2 or 3 times. But really take care of that, because it would be a shame if the gimbal broke down because of a stupid mistake like that, of course. So that's the build quality and all the bells and whistles. It's, well, not a lot that I can say. It's a really nice drone. It has sensors up in the front, it has a sensor in the back or 2, and it has sensors in the bottom. There are no sensors on the side, so if you're doing panning shots, you really have to keep in mind that there are no sensors on the left and the right side of the drone. I personally hate sensors, to be honest. I turn the sensors off always. With the Parrot Anafi doesn't have any sensors at all, but it is a safer way to fly, in my opinion, because you have to fly visual line of sight anyway, and if you don't, well, probably you're overseas or whatever. At least if I'm not visual line of sight, I'm flying overseas or really remote areas. I'm not flying over cities, so you're not going to crash into a building anyways. You needing sensors probably tells you that you're flying in a terrain that you shouldn't be flying in, and you're yeah, I don't know, doing some acrobatic shit, I guess. For me, flying without sensors is a blast, because I've more than once encountered a situation where I was doing this really epic shot. At least that was what I was thinking at that moment. And then I got a sensor warning mid-flight while there were no obstacles in the area. It was like, I think, maybe a bird, or there were shadows, and the sensors just freaked out, and it can really mess up your experience, mess up your shot, and it costs you a lot of time. And if you just pay attention to what you're shooting, where you're flying, you really don't need any sensors. So let's go to image quality. So the image quality of the Mavic Air 2 is really phenomenal, if you ask me. I've been flying the Parrot Anafi, of course. I've been flying the Mavic 2 Pro, and now I'm flying the Mavic Air 2. And I have to say that during lit situations, so daylight, even sunset or sunrise, I don't really see a difference between the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic Air 2. So even though the Mavic 2 Pro has a 10-bit codec and a 1-inch sensor, the codec of the Mavic Air 2 really can handle a lot of grading. It is really flexible. The only downside for me is that it's not shooting any log profiles, so the flattest profile that you can choose from is the D Cine-like profile. It's like a Cine D on the Panasonic Lumix line cameras, and I guess Canon and Sony other brands also have this like in-between picture profile that's not really a log profile. It has less contrast and less saturation than the standard profile. It's like a mix. That's the picture profile that I'm flying with this drone, and you can really give it your own style, your own look and feel. For the car commercial with the supercars, I went for a really warm tone. I wanted to make it feel like a bit of a gold rush western type of situation, and it was no problem grading the footage that I took with the Mavic Air 2 to make it match with, for instance, my C200. Of course, you'll see some difference in dynamic range, but that's not really a surprise, of course, comparing a cinema camera that is like 6 or 7K to a $700 consumer drone. And if you're looking at it from that perspective, I'm even more amazed by the image quality coming from the Mavic Air 2. So yeah, the overall image quality is great. It has a 4K 60 frames a second slow motion function as well, which matches the C200. It can shoot into 24 frames, 30 frames, 60 frames, and 120 frames a second. The 120 frames a second is in Full HD and not in 4K. I'm not really shooting slow-mo with my drone anyway, to be honest. The fact that it has 4K 60 is amazing. That it's in this small form factor, shooting 4K at 60 frames per second, that you have the flexibility to slow it down is amazing. One downside, I shoot at 25 frames a second and 50 frames a second because I'm in Europe, in the PAL area, and I cannot shoot in 50 frames or 25 frames. It's either 24 or 60, so it doesn't always match my timeline sequence because most of the time that's in 25 frames a second. So that's image quality. It's a really capable drone, and I'm really amazed by that. Then noise, the noise profile. Looking at the DJI Mavic Air, it was quite a mess. My friend Tom has one, and it's really loud. It's crazy loud, like someone screaming from the sky. So it's not really possible to keep a low profile and fly around in stealth mode, which was possible with the Parrot Anafi because it was quite a light drone. It had a different design of propellers, and they were pretty silent. It was you couldn't really tell the drone was flying around, and I did some pretty nice wildlife shots as well here in the Netherlands, and those cows. They didn't even mention the drone, so that was really nice. I don't know if it's as silent as the Parrot Anafi, but the Parrot Anafi didn't have as much power as this one, so I can't really blame the Anafi. And this is a whole new drone, new technology, and this one is actually fast as hell. So let's talk about speed. The Parrot Anafi was a pretty fast drone, but sometimes it did lack some, I don't know, it lacked some power. And the DJI Mavic 2 Pro was a beast, super fast. It really had a lot of power even when flying in sports mode. And you can tell that there's some DNA of the Mavic 2 Pro in the Mavic Air too. It has fast motors. It really packs some punch when you turn it into sports mode. And flying the Mavic 2 Pro before, I could really tell and feel and recognize some of that beef, some of that power. It's really enjoyable to fly with this drone in sports mode. You can play around, do some tricks with it. Of course, it will never be an FPV drone, but it is adding to the whole experience of flying. And you can actually chase some cars or motors if you want to when they're driving around 50 kilometers an hour, 60 perhaps. I don't know what the top speed was. I think it was around 60 kilometers an hour, but it does have some trouble reaching the top speed sometimes. It's really dependent on what the wind speed is and the wind direction. If you're flying against the wind, that your top speed really decreases. You can tell. But if you're flying in harsh wind, but you have the wind coming from behind, it's possible you're going 70 kilometers an hour or so. So that's like 40 miles an hour. It's pretty fast. The next point, handling. I already kind of went ahead in my last point, but flying this drone is a blast. It's really fun and enjoyable to fly this drone. I really enjoyed flying the Parrot Anafi as well, but it was more about the cinematic stuff. It had a pretty nice image coming from the drone, and you could play around with the zoom function, but it was more of a, it's not a sporty drone, the Parrot Anafi. The Parrot Anafi is more of a flying gimbal actually, or flying dolly or whatever. So it's really easy going left, right. It's like it's on cushions, which for cinematic footage is great, but sometimes it's also nice to just put the thing in sports mode and fly to where you want to be. Sometimes you really need to be fast at a certain point and start your footage there, and then it's really nice to be able to turn it into sports mode and just blast off. Then let's take a look at the controller. So I've put on my GoPro Hero 7, and let's take a look at the controller. So this is the new designed DJI Mavic Air 2 controller, and like I mentioned before, the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic Air controllers were, in my opinion, really badly designed. I didn't like them at all. You were always messing around with the cables. Sometimes they disconnected mid-flight or whatever, and the overall feel was nothing that matched the positioning and the way I think DJI wants to communicate their brand. It was a really flimsy controller. Yes, it was a compact form factor, which is great, but that's, I think, in my opinion, all the positive things that I can say about the DJI controller before the Mavic Air 2 came out. So this is the new controller, OnePlus 6T on top, and it fits pretty well. If you are flying with a tablet, it's not possible to mount the tablet in this, but you can buy a special tablet mount for this controller if you want to fly it with a tablet. So looking at this controller, on the bottom you have a USB-C port, which is really nice, nothing special, like nothing unique, just a USB-C port to charge the remote and to do some firmware upgrades if you need to, and the two sticks, so you can put the sticks in the controller and then you can, let's do this. And they have a really nice grip. It's like a sort of a crown where you put your fingers on, and that makes sure that you don't lose grip of the controls while flying. And the controls are really nice. You can really fly precise. And you can dial in the settings if you like in the DJI Fly app. This is the return to home button. So if you're flying somewhere and you want the drone to come back, you don't want to fly it manually, you can push the back to home button and it will just return to the set home point. This is well, a really handy flip switch. It's going from tripod mode, which is a really soft way of flying. You can fly really precise as well to nail those cinematic shots. It's normal, in the normal mode it already gains up some speed, to be honest. It can be tricky already to fly really controlled, dependent on the type of shot you want to do. If you just want to do a tracking shot, the normal mode would be fine, but if you want to do some combination of movements, then tripod mode is probably the way to go. And then you've got sports mode, and sports mode is just full blast, going from A to B as fast as you can, and it's pretty fun flying in sports mode every now and then. If you want to turn on the remote control, you can press this short and long. It's actually the same as the Phantom series, Phantom 1, 2, 3, 4. They maintained the same way of turning on their equipment, which is really nice, because this was the same way I turned on my Phantom 2, for instance. The same goes for the Mavic Air drone itself. Don't forget to take off this cap, and you can press it short, long, and then it will start its startup sequence. It does a gimbal check. So you can check your battery percentages roughly by looking at the LEDs on top of the drone. So right now it's somewhere in between the 100 and the 50%. It's pretty hard to tell how much juice there's in this battery precisely, of course, because there are only 4 LEDs, but don't worry, you can check your battery levels as well on the telephone by looking at the battery percentage up in the right corner. I'm inside, so it doesn't see any satellites. That's why my satellite is red. It tells me there are not enough satellites. It tells me takeoff permitted, so I can take off if I want to. But of course, I'm inside. I'm not really keen on flying inside, to be honest, and there's no GPS whatsoever right now. I'm not really going into the settings of the DJI Fly app. There are a lot of other videos that will just show you around in the settings. I'm the type of guy that just doesn't read the manual, unpacks the drone and starts flying, and then I'll go on a little adventure finding out the stuff myself. I don't know about you, maybe you're the type of person that really does read the manual, but yeah, I'm a bit of a stubborn guy, I guess. So what's nice to see is that you can already tell the gimbal is doing its job. When I'm moving the drone around, it keeps the camera really steady. And if you want to add ND filters to this drone, I don't have any, to be honest, but I do recommend it if you want to match your shutter speed, for instance, to the timeline you are working with your cinema camera or whatever, because right now I'll need to adjust my exposure with my ISO and my shutter speed. I don't have control over my diaphragma with my Mavic Air 2. But if you use NDs, you can keep your shutter speed low. So you can keep your shutter speed at 25 when shooting 24 frames a second. If you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, just ignore what I just said. So all the most important stuff for shooting your video, for handling your drone, is already on the remote. And that's why I love this remote so much. It's really ergonomic. You can probably drop this from a few feet and it will still be whole. The new app is, well, it takes some time getting used to, but that being said, I'm really loving this drone. I could really recommend this if you're in the market for a new consumer or prosumer drone. For me personally, I don't see any reason to buy the Mavic 2 Pro at this moment, to be honest. It's more expensive, and the only benefit for me would be that I can control my aperture, my diaphragma. For me, it's not such of a big deal that I would go for the Mavic 2 Pro at this point in time. I'd rather save some money, buy the Mavic Air 2 and save some money or spend some money on other equipment, like for instance, I don't know, lighting. So, this was my review on the Mavic Air 2. Let me get rid of this GoPro. Well, thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I'm planning on doing some more videos as well. Please like and subscribe if you did like this video. I hope to see you next time. Bye.